Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. Welcome also to those watching the meeting on YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode. Only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, please ensure they are switched on when speaking and switched off when you are finished speaking. Minutes will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. I will begin with agenda item 1 and call upon member services to report any apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Tierney.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2. Agenda item 2 is the appointment of Vice Chair for the remainder of the municipal year for 23-24. I would like to propose Councillor Mockett. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Christie, thank you. Are there any other nominations? Don't need to have a vote on this. It is therefore proposed that Councillor Mockett is appointed as the Vice Chairman of the Audit and Risk Management Committee for the remainder of the municipal year of 23-24. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Agenda item 3 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting of the 20th of November 23 as being a correct record. Do I have a proposer to approve these minutes? Are you proposing them?
Yep.
Yep.
But I do have an amendment as well.
Can I have a seconder, please? Okay. Does any members have any comments?
We haven't got present Councillor Nawaz because he was here as a substitute member.
That's all been noted.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Could I have a show of hands to approve these minutes? Thank you, members. The minutes of the meeting on 20th November 23 are therefore agreed. Agenda item 4 is to report additional items for consideration which the Chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. I believe there are none today. Agenda item 5 is to receive any declarations of interest under the Local Code of Conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you raise your hand? No hands raised, nothing to declare, thank you. Agenda item 6 is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Capital Strategy, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement and the Annual Investment Strategy for 24-25. I now call upon Mark Saunders, Chief Accountant, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't be saying all that mouthful every time we talk about the title of the report, so we'll keep it brief and just refer to it as the Treasury Management Strategy. Otherwise, I'm going to get my tea even later than normal. So this is the first report that members will receive during the year on the Treasury Management function. There are 3 reports in total. This is the first one. You'll receive an annual report around about June, July time of all the activities that have happened from the previous financial year. And later in the year, around October, November time, you'll receive a mid-year report updating members with what's happened to date in the year. This, by some margin, is by far the most important of those 3 reports, as it sets the strategy for the coming year and provides a framework under which we will operate the treasury management function of the council in the coming year. Following review by this committee today, the strategy will then become incorporated into the budget report that's going to council later this month on the 26th of February. It becomes a very important part of that strategy. So as you can see, some of the figures as you can see in the report, in terms of investment income and external interest on borrowings, are quite significant. So they play an important role in the budget of the council. This report covers around 4 main areas, really. We go into a lot of detail about the investment of surplus cash, about how we invest the council's surplus cash, who we invest it with, and how we determine who those people are, and the criteria that we use to invest with. The external borrowing is another important feature. We've done very little external borrowing over a number of years now, but the current capital programme indicates that there will be a requirement to take out further external borrowing as we go through the next 3 or 4 years. So this strategy determines how we will do that, and more importantly, the timing of that borrowing, particularly with the way the interest rates are at the moment, which are obviously quite high relative to what it's been the last few years. And we are expecting them to reduce over the next year or two. So the timing of any borrowing will be crucial in terms of ensuring we're not paying more interest than we need to. The other area within the report section is the minimum revenue provision. All authorities have to make prudent provision for repayment of their external borrowing. And there's a section in the report which details about what our MRP policy is, and that is a requirement that we have to, a government requirement that we have to specify what that policy is. There's currently another consultation out about the minimum revenue provision, which seems to have been for the last 4 or 5 years, as the government have become concerned that some authorities are not making prudent provision for repayment of their borrowings. We're not one of them, by the way. We make proper provision for any borrowing that we do take out. So there could be some new requirements coming out when that consultation's finished. We're confident that the policy that's detailed in this report actually covers all those areas. So we don't think there will be any need to actually change our MRP policy as a result of that. The other main area which we have to include in the strategy each year at the beginning of the year are all the indicators that we're required to do by various legislations and codes of practice. These cover both the capital programme and all the treasury management indicators around borrowing and investments. So as I say, the whole strategy and the whole paper covers the framework under which we will operate the treasury management function going forward, and really important to emphasise to members that everything in here complies with all the relevant legislation and the codes of practice issued by the government and by CIPFA, which is our professional body. Much of what's in here is actually prescribed by those legislation and code of practice. You'll see it repeated in virtually every local authority treasury management strategy statement that you care to look at. What will be different, obviously, the numbers and some of the issues around who they might borrow, who might borrow with, who they might lend the cash to. They will. You always have discretion over those type of things, depending on what your risk appetite is, because the code of practice and the guidance doesn't tell you what it should be. That's left for each authority and their members to decide what their level of risk they wish to take. As I said, the investment of surplus cash during the year is really important to us because that does generate a significant amount of interest income to us. Over £1 million this year, or £750,000 next year is what our current forecasts are. But obviously, we've been helped this year in particular because of the relatively high interest environment. We still are returning just over 5% on some of our fixed-term deposits of a fairly short-term nature, so they're still around about 5%. But that is forecast to reduce come September, October time this year, when the base rate is forecast to start reducing. So as a result of that, and continue to reduce all during next year, so by September 25, the experts are telling us that will be around about 3%. I'll make no comment about how accurate experts are. That's what they're currently forecast. So we're expecting that to come down. So a combination of that, plus the reducing available cash balances that we'll have, then it accounts for why the investment income starts to reduce during next year, but still a significant sum in the context of our overall budget. And as I mentioned earlier, the borrowing, we've tended not to borrow over the last few years. We tend to use our own cash balances to fund any borrowing, so to avoid obviously the high interest charges that go with that. But we will be in a position where we're not going to be able to carry on doing that for much longer, and certainly during next year we will be in a position where we will need to start looking to take some more external borrowing out to fund the capital programme. That will depend on the timing of the capital programme and when the works to get done and expenditure is incurred, as well as when the interest forecasts are due to start reducing. At the moment, if we take any borrowing out, we're advised to take it on quite a short-term basis, so that we can then renew that in 6-12 months' time at a lower interest rate, not to lock ourselves into any long-term rates at the moment until the interest rates start stabilising again in a year or two's time. So we will keep a close eye on making sure that we carry out that borrowing at the most opportune time for the council. I don't think I've got too much more to say, Chairman. The report does go into quite a bit of detail on all those aspects, and I don't intend to go through every page of that. Could be here for quite some time. I'm sure members will have time to actually review the report, and quite happy to take any questions that members have, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth, the seconder. Councillor Mockett, thank you. I now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Just in interest of transparency, I see we've got a loan with Yorkshire Building Society. I did work there 5 years ago now, but I have declared that previously, but just so everyone's aware. Sorry? Yeah. I wouldn't know. Not in contact with them anymore. So, just I guess one of the questions is you mentioned about when you're going to borrow money in the future. Obviously, it's likely to be through Public Works Loan Board, but you're looking to make any borrowing after September. Is that correct? You're likely to borrow money after September when you're expecting rates to go down. Is that what the plan is?
Probably be around about that time.
Yeah.
You've got to balance against what surplus cash, what can go over the council to take it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, can you use your microphone, please?
I do. If you ask nicely. Yeah, it depends on the timing of a variety of things. The capital programme tends to, the cash flow of that tends to be more towards the second half of the year anyway, by the time the schemes get up and running. And similarly with our normal cash flow, tends to be higher in the first half of the year than it does in the second half. So it would look likely to be around about sort of September, October time that we will be looking to.
Okay, and I guess just following up from that, I mean, the Public Works Loan Board is about 5%, isn't it? The rate roughly. Yeah, but
we get 0.2% off that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Because the problem is it was after the mini budget in September 2022 when suddenly all the rates shot up, didn't they? Which and we're still feeling the effects of that, unfortunately. So yeah. Okay.
It was Mark's been saying this. Yes, we did. The property funds that we invested in March 22 was the epitome of good timing, because within the next 6 months things went completely haywire on the interest rate and the impact on some of the property type funds, and we're still suffering the consequences of that. But obviously they are long-term investments, so we're hoping this will ride out this particular storm, and then we'll get back on an even keel in the next year or two.
I think what Marcus said is right, but borrowing, we would always look at a range of options, to be fair, and obviously we've used internal borrowing as much as we can, but equally it might not be the PWLB, because although all the local authorities plead poverty and everything, there is still a lot of cash in the system, and it might be that we do short-term some intra-borrowing from another local authority, because that might be more beneficial. But our treasury management strategy, we look at things every day. We have professional advisors, so we don't do anything without taking advice and looking at lots of different options. PWLB historically has been good, but they did hike their rates basically as a reaction to a lot of the commercial borrowing that local authorities were doing. But we're always very careful. We would look at the circumstances at the time we were looking to borrow. We'd look at options.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just two questions, Mark, if you can. The first one, on the fourth bullet, on the key issues, you talked about external interest payments, revised estimates. I take it, is that down to interest rate changes, is it? Or
in terms of what? Sorry, the comparison between two will be? Yeah. Well, it'll be a combination of the fact that we'll be taking more borrowing out next year, and 618 is basically the amount that that is on our current borrowings. So that's what on our current PWLB debt and Barclays debt that we have is that's what the current figures are. And next year it'll be because we're thinking about taking out additional borrowing at a slightly lower rate than what the PWLB is at the moment. That we're forecasting to go later in the year.
Thanks. And the other question I've got is
will depend on what extent of the borrowing is that we need to take out, because obviously as Peter says, we look at the cash flow every day. We do a detailed cash flow every month going forward to see when we're likely to need the cash. So obviously we don't want to be taking out borrowings that we don't need to take out. So we keep a very close eye on that.
And then the other question I've got is on section 5. You've got the capital programme. I just wonder what sort of assumptions are being used on things like capital grants and Section 106 and other contributions, which seem to be going down quite significantly, as well as the forecast capital expenditure going down.
Yeah, the capital grants certainly for this year and next year are grants which we know we're likely to receive, because they're part of a funding arrangement, so we have for particular capital projects, and also incorporates. The 1194 is essentially to do with disabled facilities grants that we receive funding from the government, and we won't know that figure until those years, but that's the current figure, and we just take that forward into the future. And if we get more, we get more. If we get less, and we scale back the program accordingly. And the Section 106 again is based upon what we've actually received to date. 1 million of that 1025 is to do with affordable housing, which we're using to fund the local authority housing property, to fund properties that we're buying with other government funding, which is included in the capital grants. We're also using some of our own money through Section 106 to fund that as well. But going forward, that is that is using some of the money that we got set aside for recreation grounds and playground equipment that we get from developers, and that's part of the program going forward. So within that program are those figures relating to some of the playground improvements that we're doing.
Any other questions, members? No? No further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to endorse the strategy detailed in this report to be included in the final budget report for 24-25. Can you please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation? Otherwise, I will take it that you agree. No raised hands, therefore the recommendation is approved. Thank you, members. Agenda item 7 is the internal audit plan for 23-24, progress report quarter 3. I now call upon David, interim audit manager, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. The report is fairly short in terms of where we are to date and just an update on resourcing. So just refer members to item 1.3 and 1.4 that 2 of the 3 staff are interim, and the council has actually now put out adverts for the roles, which I think the deadline is 1st of March. If I'm right, Peter? Yep. Or Amy? No, anyway, so we're waiting for that, but there will be continuity until that point, so members can be assured that we're not leaving poor Laura Newton high and dry. In terms of the reports themselves, we've managed to add a couple more in Q3, freedom of information and safeguarding, which is a follow-up, and I'll come to that in Appendix A. Just a quick update really on the future progress reports. We actually have now issued the debtors and collection agency report, which was last week, and the Port Berthings one is on the cusp of being issued now. So I will update the members at not the next meeting, but the one after on the progress for Q4. So that will be in July. You'll have to wait for that. I'm sorry, members. In terms of the completed audits, what I have done as well in the italics on the right-hand side, giving you an update on where we are with existing the audits that have been issued so far this year. So all issues at the moment, as of the date of this report, we're seeing the end of December, all still in play. Getting good interaction from officers, and issues are progressing well. The 2 reports that have come out of here, Freedom of Information Act, so there were a few medium issue risks and relating basically to the overdue and outstanding FOI request exceeding statutory time frame. So monitoring is basically being agreed to be improved by the end of March. We have the publication scheme, which is a requirement as well. We're going to have that implemented by the end of March. Training and awareness, which is also key for officers by the end of the year. And the performance reporting has been completed. That was issued and done at the last management team meeting. And safeguarding and children and vulnerable adults follow-up, basically that was dependent on the policy being approved, which has been done. There are just a couple of issues that are now linked to the new HR platform for training, which will hopefully be done, the platform itself in April, and then that subsequently. And the final bit of the report relates to the Appendix B on the recommendation status. I'm pleased to let members know that there's been a lot of work done by officers to get the overdues down to 1 from previous years. That's down to the CCTV, which is, we're still waiting for the final procedure to be completed, and I've been assured by the Associate Director responsible that this will be imminent. All others are in play, and we, as you can see from the numbers, total completes for 21, 22, 22, 23 are very close now to being completed, so there are only just a handful of issues there. So 21, 22 is just the safeguarding ones from the follow-up, which I've pointed out already. 22, 23, we still have a couple of high-risk ones relating to the agreement with LCC on Cross Keys, and the other to do with the IR35 scheme, waiting for the recruitment code of practice to be it was completed, just waiting approval now. And cyber training work, which is that's the medium risk issue, but I'm in the process of doing a follow-up audit, well, newish follow-up audit anyway, which I'm hoping to complete this month. And therefore you can see for the current year we have 16 outstanding at the moment, but they're all in play and we're keeping on top of them. So that's the report in a nutshell.
Thank you, David. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth. And a seconder? Councillor Christie. Thank you. Now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments. Councillor Christie.
Thanks, Chair. David, just one of the things I noticed on section 2.3, talk about the cyber security audit. I just wondered when that is, or how that's progressing, and when we'll be able to see that. Just aware that last couple of months has been an increase in cyber attacks in the public and private sector, and some authorities have shut down because of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'm personally doing this audit, and I'm trying to finalise it now with Stephen Beecher, Head of ICT Digital. So we are getting to a process where it's more of a sort of governance angle. We ourselves, I'm confident with what Stephen has told me and shown me, and we're going through a demonstration of the protections that they've got. But I'm convinced that they're doing a great job. So from that point of view, and I'm sure Peter will echo that we are protected to, and we're going, I think, a bit beyond what we need to do, which is also good. We've had these NCSC, so the National Cyber Security Centre, essentials report completed. We've passed with flying colours on that. So that's the sort of minimal coverage we need. Our firewalls have been upgraded. Our biggest weakness from general is users, as usual, Councillor. So we have to be a little bit better on our training and understanding of what we can do, and there's a weakness in the vulnerabilities that we as users in the systems can invoke. But generally, the report will be out fairly soon, and I'll summarise the key stuff. But it's looking quite good.
Councillor Booth.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to raise about the Freedom of Information request report, because obviously it looks to me like it was saying we didn't have a publication scheme. Obviously, it's 2000 Act. I'm sure we must have had one at some point. So are we saying it wasn't on the website? And is it that it's just dropped off over time?
I could answer that. Do you? Would you? Yeah, sorry. Amy's going to take that, Councillor, if that's okay.
So the information's always been there on the website, but it hasn't been pulled together in more recent years as effectively as it could have been. There's a reference to publication scheme on the website, so it has existed at some point, but I couldn't tell you when it came down or why. But every piece of information that is required to be published by us has always been published by us. So what we've done, and it is up on the website already, is just created a central page which lists everything from the model publication scheme and puts the link there for you to access it on another page of the website. So what was missing was that sort of entry point page on the website for you to easily navigate to the different places where it's contained.
Yeah, so the information was buried, basically, is what we're...
Not on purpose. I mean,
no, I'm not saying it was on purpose, but...
It was obviously there if you need a search terms to use, but obviously now that we have this new entry point, it just makes it abundantly clear to people what they need to click on to find it.
Yeah. And is it possible that when we sort of refurbished the website, that's when a lot of this sort of kind of got buried, as it were, or was it?
It might have done, because there was reference on the so when we've been looking at this, there was reference on the page to it being there, and the model publication scheme. And some authorities have sort of printed the model publication scheme, which we could have done. But what we've tried to do is sort of thread it all through so that you've got under each heading the specific link to the policy, link to the page, like transparency information. So I honestly can't say why or when that happened, but I can say with confidence that it was a very easy task because everything was there. We just needed to put it. It happened within half a day because we could find everything that we needed. Nothing needed uploading. It was there. It just needed putting together.
guess that brings to the sort of next point is about future governance, because obviously the same could happen again with changes to the website, and we could sort of be in a similar position. So, are we going to do maybe biannual checks every 2 years to make sure it's all in place and at the appropriate point, or how are we going to make sure we don't get in the same position?
I think that's a good suggestion. And what we could do is we could almost treat it like a policy, because we now have obviously a central register of all of our policies and the dates that we want to review them by. So rather than treat it as a sort of web page, what I'll do is I'll ask Dave to add it to our register of policies, and I'll put a review date in it so that we can monitor it like we do all other key publications. Okay, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, Councillor, there's also from an audit point of view that we would be looking at outstanding issues and following them up anyway. So there is that tracking that we would do, and we would revisit, we would revisit this from a risk-based point of view as well. So there would be a review probably within 3 years anyway.
I guess the other point I just want to follow up on this topic is about we say there's lack of formal training and awareness. So is the issue that people don't know when they're receiving freedom of information requests and how to deal with it? Well, can you give a bit more flavour, context to what this issue?
From the audit sampling, I think a lot of it came down to an understanding of what constituted a request, and then the resources to do it, and prioritisation, and getting the information from the service. Relevant that I think there was that slight disconnect. I don't know, Amy, if there was anything more you can add to that, if you don't mind.
No, I don't know. So requests for information are primarily dealt with by member services colleagues, but through an FOI sort of account, which is for freedom of information requests, environmental information regulations requests, and obviously stuff under the UK GDPR. And I think colleagues are reasonably good at recognising when they've received a request for information. They're probably better at providing the information. So it wouldn't be the case that stuff's being asked for and not provided, but maybe it doesn't always come through FOI. But a lot does. And we've had a process of training within FOI over the last couple of years, where we've been upskilling within the team to be able to recognise exemptions and apply them, and to also provide support to the services that obviously are primarily responsible for responding to these requests. So we've been doing a lot of work around that, but the part of the training that needs to happen now is we sort of identified what we might call as champions within the different services. So our next step is to sort of get the champions together and train them so that they can support FOI in supporting the services, recognising requests, knowing what exemptions apply, and potentially also creating some capacity to respond to them. So I think that's sometimes the issue, is the resource to be able to deal with a huge, or something that constitutes a huge request. And some of them are pages and pages long. Of course, someone's got to go through all of those pages, put them in chronological order, take out all the information that can't be in there, and it's really resource intensive. So that does sometimes mean that we miss the deadline, but I think what we need to get better at recording is that it is completely acceptable for us to request an extension in certain circumstances, and it may be that that's what we've done, that we've missed the first deadline but responded within the extended deadline. So that's something we need to get better at recording as well, so that might actually make the results look, more compliant than they currently do, and that's something this is highlighted. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. I guess the only point that raises is, it's about the identification. And so if we've got new starters in the organisation, is it part of their induction? Do they know who to refer to, for example? It's that type of thing, isn't it? If someone that's experienced and sort of has dealt with freedom of information in the past, it's probably not going to be an issue. But it's when people are new to the organisation, it's possibly a new concept to them, because it's pretty much local government and government that do this. I guess that's are we satisfied that area is suitably covered?
So we agree, and it's something that Sam and I have been looking at. So we are going to make sure that we include some additional modules in the induction. So I think there's something on there about UK GDPR, but that's primarily subject access requests, and of course it's wider than that. So we're going to be looking at building on that as part of our wider colleague training. I mean, it wouldn't be the case to say that no one's ever had training, because of course they have, but the time is right now for us to look at refreshing and reviewing that, and that's what we're doing.
I have a question. Just you talked about some of the sort of larger requests, but isn't there an exemption that if it's going to take so many hours that you can actually decline the freedom of information? Do you ever use that if it is a particularly large request? Because I understand, you read articles that there are some, I guess, what you might call spurious requests for information. So, I've heard of local authorities being requested, what's their zombie invasion plan, sort of thing, and that type of thing. So, how do we deal with that? Are we sort of being pragmatic in those instances?
We do try, but I think to be able to say that something's sort of vexatious or manufactured to deliberately create disruption to the council is quite a high bar, because I think you'd recognise that such a request if one were to be received, but obviously set against that is the sort of legislative requirement and also the guidance, which says that we should try and be as obliging as possible. So I think that's the place where we start. We've got to take that request at face value, and if at face value it creates some issues for us, then obviously we'll deal with them. But by and large, they are legitimate requests. We treat them as such. It is a 19-hour cut-off, but different people have different views on that as well, because some people will take it that if it's going to take more than 19 hours, you provide nothing at all. But we often look and say, well, what can we provide in the 19 hours, or how can we work with the person who's requesting the information to try and get them to narrow down their search parameters so that we can actually give them what they want and focus in ourselves, so that we don't waste a lot of colleagues' time sort of trying to do everything within the 19 hours. So yeah, there's a bit of back and forth, but by and large, again, most requests do make sense on the face of them, but they just require a lot of information to be generated. Not all of them, but there's a sort of a few each year where it generates a huge amount of information, but it's legitimate, and it probably won't take 19 hours, but it's still, even sort of, if you like, 5-6 hours out of somebody's 20 working day deadline that wasn't expected can have an impact, and that's why we want to sort of develop the champions and a better sort of support network around that, so that there's more than one pair of eyes working on it.
I was just going to say, Councillor Booth, I can confirm we don't have a zombie invasion plan. So just for anyone that is asking, we don't have one at the moment. But equally, what Amy's saying, talking to Sam as well, is because the complaints process is changing as well. So the LGO we're currently out for consultation on that, and they're going to make that a lot slimmer. So where we operate a 3-stage, it's likely to be a 2-stage. So what we're looking at as well is some synergies between what we do there and these sort of requests as well. Because I think the other thing Amy hasn't mentioned is that she does bring a report on how we're performing on things like FOIs to management team now. So the whole visibility of the thing is much, people are more aware all the time. And I think we constantly look to improve those things, and with our complaints process as well. And there's a lots of synergies between those things. And the number of FOIs does seem to go up every year. I mean, they're not insurmountable. I think it was 500-600. We're over 10-20 a week, something like that, on FOIs. And the trouble with the FOI mechanism is it can be suppliers looking for information on contract, it can be the press, it can be a member, it can be anyone. And so I think we generally deal with them very, very well, and your performance reporting helps as well. But it is about just making more people aware and not just relying on a few people all the time. So I think the work we're doing is going to improve all of that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, there's a lot more sort of lobbying groups are making requests to get information, like potentially charities or just people that want to lobby for a particular topic. And that's, it does take up a lot of resources of councils across the whole country. So.
Thank you, members. Any other questions, queries? Yeah.
Could I just do a bit, because David did touch on resource, and I just wanted to give you a bit more of a fuller flavour on what we're doing on resource, because you're all aware, particularly we've had resourcing issues in planning, and that's been through employment committee, and we're making some strides there, there's no doubt about that. Similar can be said of professional people and the internal audit. It's been very difficult to recruit to internal audit. In a way, we had our previous audit manager was here for like 22 years. But the good thing when she did leave is that we got some fresh pair of eyes in, and we're looking at things through a slightly different lens now, and that's helped enormously. So not only are we out for advert, and we have done that before and we haven't been too successful, and I'm not holding my breath, particularly this time, but I'm also having discussions because the other neighbouring authorities are equally having similar problems. So potentially we're looking at consortiums sharing resource. So we're sort of parallel running a lot of these things. So we don't start from scratch. We don't say, oh, we've got no recruit, we'll then try this. So we're trying a lot of things, and of course we'll keep this committee particularly updated, because we know how important, and we certainly value the internal audit and the work they do. So having David and Graham, who's the other sort of agency staff, has been really helpful as well, because you get that fresh pair of eyes. So we're looking at all angles. We'll see which route we go, but we'll keep updating this committee at each meeting as to where we are on resource and what we're doing.
Thank you, Peter. There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to consider and note the activity and performance of the internal audit function. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation, otherwise I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendation is approved. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the RIPA policy. I now call upon Amy Brown, Head of Legal and Governance, to introduce the report.
Thank you. So this is an annual report that this committee receives, and normally it is designed to just report on the number of occasions that we may or may not have used the powers under this Act. But this time round it's a slightly longer report because we've actually also made some changes to the policy. I've tried to sort of set out in the report what those changes are, and they're also sort of highlighted in yellow in the policy document itself. I think you'll see that sort of, I won't say they're largely cosmetic, but I don't think there's anything groundbreaking in there. It primarily reflects sort of changes in guidance and looking at other examples of best practice and just evolving our policy to make sure that we keep pace with that. But what we have specifically included in there are a couple of additions based on the outcome of our previous inspection. One of those relates to how long we retain information for, so safeguarding of information. We were recommended to have a sort of flowchart procedure document that would be easier for staff to kind of work through rather than having to plot through the policy and guidance itself. So we've developed that, and we'll be sort of making sure that we put that on the intranet. And if you approve the changes to the policy today, we'll be doing sort of what's breaking article to make sure everyone's aware of the changes and aware of these new templates, and we put them in a place where they can get them easily in future. Because the other bit that we have changed or added is to reflect that where officers use social media or the internet in their investigations, they need to complete this new template document to make sure that it isn't going over the tipping point and going into something that might invoke the requirements of the legislation. So they're the two things that we've changed on the advice of the inspector. As you'll see, we have used the powers under the Act once this year, or once since in the current municipal year, so since you were last received a report. And we've also had a training session for everybody over the last municipal year as well. So the report asks for you to kind of note our activities over the last year and to please approve the proposed changes to the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth. The seconder? Councillor Mockett, thank you. Now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if any comments. Councillor Booth and then Councillor Christie.
Yeah, I mean, I've said in the past, you know, we appear to be fairly proportionate in the way we use these powers, although I think I have said that we probably need to consider using it more particularly for fly tipping, because that is quite a big issue, particularly out in the rural areas. So I'm forever having to report it. So I see we've used the power once. Was it in relation to fly tipping, or was it something completely different?
Can we take that offline? Because the reason I say that is obviously we need to kind of protect the anonymity, if you like, or confidence of that particular application. But I'm happy to share that information with you as a councillor and a need to know. But I'm less happy to do it in a public setting.
Well, I think we can give broad strokes of why we've used the powers. I mean, one of the issues that have been reported in the past is like, you know, local authorities using it to determine if someone lives in the catchment area, and you know, ridiculous situations. We're obviously not in that same sort of bracket of local authorities, and you know, we do use it sparingly. But you know, I have said in the past, I think because we've got such a big issue with fly tipping, we need to be considering using this power to try and combat that, because it's only getting worse and worse from what I can see. You know, and particularly things like asbestos now being dumped out in the rural roads and that, which sometimes it's not. Well, it's just on the road, and it's not even on the verges. So yeah, I would say I think we can broadly report the areas that are being covered, but obviously I understand about GDPR and not going into specifics of individual cases. But
So I think what I can take away from that is when we relaunch the policy, if the amendments are approved today, that obviously I'm going to get in touch with all of the different services within the council that might call upon these powers. So what I can do is certainly focus in on that area of the business to see whether they feel comfortable with the policy, whether they understand it, whether they feel confident to use it, and if there are any areas that they could use it for in relation to fly tipping, so that it addresses your sort of concern of it potentially not being used enough. But you know, obviously there are quite high thresholds that you have to be able to cross to be able to use the powers anyway. And then obviously we have to persuade the JP that we've gone down the right track too. So it's not, you know, it's, as we've put in the report, it's not a sparingly used power. And there are often other ways of, you know, dealing with these things that don't require something quite so invasive. And that's what we try and look at first. But definitely I will let you know, and also link in particularly with those services.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sam, thank you for all the report. There's a lot of information in there. It all looks good. For me, the most interesting part, they say interesting, was that the case law examples in there, which they seem to have added. I think especially those examples where they'd found against the local authorities as well. All I would sort of say is just making sure that those are, because they bring the document to life really, and making sure through the training that people are aware of those, because it'd be very easy to fall foul of some of those case law examples in there.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's good to have practical examples, and some of that is what's been added to the policy. And obviously, we've had our training, and we've got a commitment to retrain on sort of biannual basis. And it is quite an arduous process to actually get an application approved, because it will go to either Peter or Sam first, and then they might take some advice, and then we'll put people to task on demonstrating why they really need it and ask extra questions, and we would consider all of these different things before actually saying, okay, well, from an internal perspective, we're happy for you to now proceed to apply to the JP. So yeah, I do think it helps for people to understand, but hopefully not put them off either for the reasons that Councillor Booth is saying.
Any other questions? No? No further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note this annual report on the Council's use of RIPA and approve the amended RIPA policy as set out in Appendix 1. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation, otherwise I will take it that you agree. No raised hands, therefore the recommendation is approved. Thank you, members. Agenda item 8 is the Corporate Risk Register.
Item 9, yeah. Sorry.
Right. Agenda item 9 is the Corporate Risk Register Quarterly Update. I'll now call upon Sam Anthony, Head of HR and Development, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. You'll have before you the usual update on the risk register that comes to the committee every quarter. There are minimal changes this time, just really some updates that are all listed in green. I'm happy to take you through the updates, but they are quite minimal, so if you want me to, Chair, or if not, I'm happy to take questions.
Could I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth, and the seconder, Councillor Mockett. Now open the item for discussion. Councillor Booth?
Yep. So I think it's more a question. Well, it was a point I raised at the last meeting about actions and putting like deadlines or targets on it. So, for example, one of the changes is around the fact that there's reviews ongoing in service areas, and that there's going to be changes delivered, but we don't know what those timescales are. Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 5 years? How can we measure how successful we are doing those reviews and delivering the actions? At the moment, we just know there's a review ongoing. So, it's a similar comment to last time, basically, that can we have some target dates where applicable? Now, some of these controls are going to be ongoing controls that will just continue, and we just need to say ongoing. But if there's a specific activity like that, then I think we need to have a target date so we can make sure that we are hitting the dates that we set ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and we can put that forward. As the report indicates, the transformation service reviews have started now, and they're rolling out, and there's two going on at the moment. So I think if we can include an update with the next risk register for the committee, I don't know whether there'll be a transformation update for Cabinet at some point in the future as well.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks very much, Sam. I was just looking at section 6, the corporate risk register at a glance. Very, very useful that is. I just wondered on the current risk, if there's any way of sort of indicating on there if those scores are either trending up, trending down, or changing at all. I think on some risk registers I've seen they use like a simple arrow scheme to sort of say is it increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. So I think that would be useful if we could add that to it as well, please.
Yeah, we can certainly add that in. They haven't moved since the last time, but we can certainly put the level to indicate that for you.
Chair, I think I'll take that on the chin. I think Councillor Booth might have suggested that before, so I think that is a good idea, and I think it does help. So, we'll definitely take that back to Mr. Beecher. Thank you.
What that does indicate, though, is there was no change last time we had the report before, when Stephen was presenting it. There's no change this time. Are we satisfied that our risk register and issues are that static? Normally you'd expect to see some movement in it, particularly when you deliver actions, because then you've got a better control environment and you should reduce the potential for that risk to occur. So it's a challenge, I guess.
I think we have a bit of a risk expert in the room anyway, and we're now involving Mr. Thacker, and he's got a risk background. So we're now inviting him to he's part of the risk group now, so I think he'll be adding, and he has suggested one or two things, which I think we're looking to take on board, and we'll certainly do that. But I think it is good to keep it under constant review, and also to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. So I think David's got a bit to offer on that as well. Yeah.
Any other comments?
I guess I should point out I was a risk manager for quite a number of years as well myself, so hence the question.
There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to agree the latest corporate risk register. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation. Otherwise, I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendation is approved. Thank you, members. Agenda item 10 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan, which I believe Peter wants to say something on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things on. You'll notice that the work plan, I was going to pick some of these up under items of topical interest, but the work plan's a bit lighter than normal. But we've got very little on here from external audit. So I was certainly looking to update you on where we are with external audit. And I've got Sian and Mark are both here as well, so they can correct me if I'm wrong. But they're now out to consultation on what's happening with external audit, where we think actually we know what we should be doing. But we will have a look at the consultation and respond. But they're talking about sort of these end dates, drop dead dates now for doing certain years. But for us, it looks very unlikely that we'll have a full audit for 22-23. Now, I don't want to steal Mark's thunder, but I'm going to anyway. So we have just published our 22-23 draft accounts on the website, and Mark, and we can send a copy round. That the draft accounts do not have to come to this committee, but we'll, Mark, I think you're going to send a copy of the draft accounts to this committee. The auditors have done some work on 22-23, but just for a value for money kind of report, and we're still awaiting the outcome of that. Looks very unlikely we'll get a full audit for 22-23, and they're now focusing, our auditors are actually already focusing now on 23-24. And that was also the changeover. If you had new auditors under the PSAA, that was the date where they were going to take over. Well, we've still got Ernst & Young, so in some ways that's okay, because I sort of worry about how you're going to, if you're not doing a 22-23 audit, how you're going to check the opening balances, all these kind of things. We've been very fortunate with Mark and the team. We've had clean audit reports for certainly as long as I can remember. But they're looking at September 24 as being the the first sort of drop date for completing audits up to 22-23. But we think we're working to 23-24 is probably where we'll get a full audit again. So quite what they're going to do for 22-23 and what we'll be bringing to this committee, we'll certainly be bringing a value for money report when we get that, but a full audit, I don't know. At the moment, it looks very unlikely. So if Mark and Sian have got anything else to add, but that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Is the value for money, that's not the audit of the housing benefit account, is it? Which that has to be, that. I mean, we never get a clear audit of that because of the way the legislation's made. So they're not even doing that audit this year, by the sounds of it.
I think they are. We will get the housing benefit.
The audits,
yeah.
They're specific, because you actually don't need to have EY to do that, but we do as a partnership. But they will carry on doing those, but they're some way behind. We've had the 22-23 audits of those, I think, anyway, have we? Was it 21-22 that we had last time, or 21-22? So they're not completed 22-23, so they'll get there eventually. But the consultation talks about, and it's been about for a little while, about the backlog of the audits, up to 22-23 being complete by September 24. But that will involve auditors providing what they call qualified opinions, or not full opinions, and they will provide opinions based upon the work that they've actually managed to do on that audit. So there will be disclaimers all over the place, and it's a way of them to fast track the audits of those accounts, doing very little work on the actual accounts. And then, as Peter said, they are concentrating quite heavily at the moment on the 23-24 audits, and we're doing a lot of work with them, as we would do normally each year, on the preliminary walkthroughs of all the systems and everything prior to the end of the year, to get ready for the 23-24 audit. We've had no indication from them at the moment exactly when they're going to do the 23-24 audit of the accounts. They're due for the draft accounts due for publication at the end of May, but obviously that could slip given the timescales of everything else that's going on. As 22-23's accounts slipped quite heavily, so we're really in their hands at the moment. We don't really know what's going on the timescales of that. We're just plodding on with what we've got to do and getting on with what we need to do, and we'll see what comes out of this. Why they're consulting again, I don't know, because these dates have been around for quite a while. What they're doing an extra level of consultation for, I don't know. Well, they can't just say that's it. Let's get on with it, because we've got to get to a stage where they've got to reset the system and get back on an even keel, because we are way out of sync of everything on the audits. And one of the biggest reasons why they got out of sync, and they mentioned here about sort of various regulatory changes and all this, that and the other, is the fact that the way they actually conduct the audit on some of these issues. And the two biggest issues that affect virtually all councils, which causes untold delays and problems, are asset valuations and pension valuations. Now, they've really got to address that issue, because if they don't, in 3 or 4 years' time, we're going to be in the same situation again. Because every authority employs experts to provide these valuations for, and the auditors spend endless amount of times checking what other experts have done. And then if they disagree with them, then we've got to go through a whole rigmarole of why this and why that. When what makes them any more expert than the valuers that we've got, I don't know. But there we are. So they've got to address it on two fronts, both getting things up to date and then getting them back on track, and addressing it from the reporting side of it and the disclosure side of it, and try and make some inroads into that, which they said they're going to do, but they've said that for quite a few years now, in trying to simplify the accounts and make them easy to understand in this, that and the other, to actually nil effect whatsoever. Because if you've ever read our accounts, and you can freely read them on our website, if you actually get to the accounts bit, then good luck, because it's a tortuous process to actually even try and get through what's in there, and it's just not user friendly one little bit. But that's what the regulations say we do, and that's what we do.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just going to add to that as well, because the other thing that always appeals to me as a finance is, what do we do about audit fees? Because I came here to you and said the audit fees are going up by 151%, and our average audit fee going forward would be about 155,000 from where we started off as a base of about 34. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what will happen with audit fees. Certainly, if they're not doing the work, we can't be expected to pay, but I'm not quite sure. That's another outstanding for me, because we still accrue the full fees, and it will be interesting to see where all that ends up.
That was the question I was going to ask, but the other knock-on effect is, if they haven't done a full audit for 22-23, it's going to be extra work for the following year, so therefore the fees for that year are going to be even higher. So that's the consequence we're going to have. I mean, have we provided any feedback to DCUH?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We'll answer this consultation as well, but our answers will be the same. And the answer for me has always been the same remark: is the accounts are too complicated. And also having us paying twice for experts, so we pay for the experts in the first place, and then we pay the auditors for their experts to disagree or agree or to challenge our own experts. You can never have enough experts. And as we know, throughout COVID, our experts, and Mark was talking about experts on interest rates are coming down. Well, that's what our experts are telling us, and that's what we go with. So it's very interesting indeed. So the whole audit world is, I think also as well, this virtual auditing, I think, is causing all sorts of problems as well, because there's nothing like having your auditors on site to come in and deal with an issue rather than having to scan 14, 15 things and go backwards and forwards. So I think the whole thing does need a reset, but it isn't just about dates. It's about the work, the simplification of accounts, the way we carry out audits. And, you know, and again, like you were saying, for 22, 23, they're going to have to, they would say qualify an opinion, but, you know, we sit here as accountants, we'd say, well, why are you qualifying? We've done nothing. We're 100% confident in our accounts.
But it does say that they have to provide the reason why they're doing that. If it's purely because they haven't done the work, then it says here that then obviously no blame should be attached to the local authority or the other, blah, 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 whatever.
The final point I was just going to make was about the triennial pension valuations. I mean, they're only as good as the day they're done anyway, because the way the stock market's moved, you know, if someone sneezes in Wall Street, the impact it can have on the stock market is you know, ridiculous. Yeah. And those valuations are out of date before they've even been published.
So that's part of the problem, yeah, because so we have the valuation done and the auditors don't come in till later, and they want to see what changes, you know, have happened. And you know, there's post-balance sheet events, and it goes on, and the longer that period between signing the accounts off, the more things change. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's just incredibly volatile. That pension valuation for 21, 22, 46 million at the end of the year. 22, 23 was 8. So it's like, what? And there's all statutory overrides around how you account for it, so it doesn't impact on the revenue account, but it just looks stupid in the balance sheet.
So actually the other thing I was going to say, Chair, was obviously it said that we would have some training on the statement of accounts at this, but we didn't think it was prudent to do that at this point in time. And I know the committee misses it when Mark doesn't give his training. So hopefully we will at some point later in the year when we've got something because we like to try and do the training when you've got things to approve to make it relevant and up to date. Yeah. So obviously that hasn't happened at the moment.
Yeah, because I make part of the audit process as well, so that you get a chance to see the accounts and have a look through them and ask questions about them prior to the auditors doing their work, and then so when they come with their report, then hopefully you'll have a better understanding about what the accounts are.
Thank you. So we'll update the work plan as and when required. The current work plan is therefore noted for information.
Could I just add one more thing?
Yes, of course.
The other thing I'd be interested in the committee's view is we've got on the action plan the independent member appointment. For those of you that have been on the audit committee before, you'll know that before our last audit manager left, we brought a report about an independent member. And we are due to bring something else back. At the moment, legislation doesn't say we need to have an independent member. It seems to be going that way. And I think when David does his audit opinion and there's the checklist and everything, that will probably talk about an independent member as well. So I think we will bring something back to this committee, maybe not in March, because I think that would be too soon, but maybe in July, as part of that checklist we go through, we'll bring a paper and we'll take a steer from the committee on how they want us to take that forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. Yeah, I can't quite agree, actually, because I think a lot of the recommendations to have an independent person sitting on audit committees as well, so I'd fully support that approach, yeah.
That's all right. Agenda item 11 is items of topical interest, but I believe you've now covered those. Agenda item 12 is items which the Chairman has deemed as under item 3 deemed urgent. I believe there are none. This marks the end of the meeting. The next meeting will be the 25th of March at 4 p.m. Now declare this meeting closed. Thank you.